Well, this Saturday's action was a lot more fun for Clemson fans. The Tigers win 66-20 over App State. We'll talk about that. Before we dive into that in too much detail, let's go through a full breakdown of the ACC power rankings. We'll spend more time on Clemson. So let's just dive right in. If you're watching this live, I've got the comments up, so feel free to leave your comments. They might get displayed during the show. All right. So at the bottom of the conference, one new bottom trio here, but Stanford, they beat Cal Poly, and that's great. But I don't have a whole lot of, I'm not going to give you a whole lot of credit for beating Cal Poly. I think they've got a tough stretch upcoming where they might lose quite a few games in a row. So for now, I'm going to keep them 17. If they could win a more substantial game, they'll certainly scoot up. Wake Forest blew 30-17 lead over Virginia at home. That's pretty ugly, and that's going to drop you down. It wasn't too long ago that Wake Forest was a really plucky team that one year came into Clemson ranked and had people worried. It's a far cry from that. I don't know if it's something with the NIL or the transfer portal, but they seem to have fallen off, and that's a program that's hard to unfall off, right? Like when they're down, they could be down for a while. So that's something to be concerned about, I think, if you're a Demon Deacon fan. And then Virginia Tech, they beat Marshall this weekend, but you're not going to move them up too much for that after they lost to Vanderbilt in week one. And they actually were not leading by much at halftime over Marshall. Virginia Tech was a team I was really high on coming into the year. I think I was wrong about that. We'll see. That's definitely a program, out of the ACC programs that I think is good for the conference when they're good. And personally, I tend to like them more than a lot of the other schools in the conference. But the way it looks now, if I'm being objective, I've got them in the bottom three. Duke scored a big win. I had them at 17. They move out of that bottom three. Same with Duke, same with Virginia. They move out of the bottom three. Duke went on the road and beat Northwestern. That's not, the most impressive win in the world, but they did beat a Power 4 opponent, a Super 2 opponent even though it was Northwestern. But they go to Illinois, pick up the win, double overtime. Malik Murphy was really good. They won in double overtime. So credit to them. Maybe they're not quite as bad as I thought. I still have my doubts, to be honest. And kind of same goes for Virginia. Kind of have doubts about this entire group. I think they could still all be really bad, but really, hopeful now that Virginia can start pulling something together. They get Maryland at home next weekend. And I know they're excited about it. They're starting to believe. So if they could pull off that win against Maryland, a Maryland team that just lost to Michigan State, mind you, they're rolling. So they're a team, I think, to watch. They could sort of bust out of this kind of grouping here at the bottom. Would certainly be happy for Tony Elliott. Maybe they come into Clemson with a decent record and a game that's not a total snooze. So happy for Tony Elliott to see them get the win. I do think Anthony Calandria, going with him, a little bit more downside, but they need the upside. And so far, it's worked out for them. Then you got three teams who we had much higher. All of them lost. Well, all of them are riding losing streaks, I guess you could say. Florida State had the week off. But SMU, they lost to BYU. They had I don't know if you call it a quarterback controversy, but both of their quarterbacks, Stone and Jennings, are both team captains. They were sharing snaps. They went with Stone for 2 series. They went with Jennings for 2 series. They went back to Stone. And after those 5 series, the offensive line for SMU was just getting manhandled. They couldn't stop BYU. They were pretty much forced to use Jennings because he could avoid the sacks because he's so nimble and fast, but he's not that accurate. And so they were able to move the ball, but when things got in the red zone, they got gummed up. They settled for 5 field goals, ended up with 15 points. That wasn't enough. His inaccuracy really showed at the very end of the game when they were in a real passing situation, and he was just missing the passes. So I don't know what they do moving forward. I think in the ACC, when they get into ACC play, they're going to be hard pressed to be like an 8-4 team. I think it's going to be a bit of a transition for them. I don't think they're bad per se, but they're a team from a lower level transitioning to a bigger conference. Florida State did not lose this weekend, but they're 0-2. And one of the teams they beat, or one of the teams that beat them, Georgia Tech, went to Syracuse and lost. So their 2 losses are looking like they're more of a reflection on Florida State than anything else. I think Florida State might be bad. And I heard it on the Cover 3 podcast, but man, if they had Syracuse's quarterback, they might be in a much better spot right now. They obviously got DJ Uyunglele, but Kyle McCord, who Syracuse got from the transfer portal from Ohio State, it's looking awfully good. I wonder, did Florida State have a shot there? I know that McCord had some like local connections growing up in that area, but nonetheless, for Florida State to land the QB and just the passing game in general with the wide receivers that they have has to be really disappointing. Moving up, North Carolina beat Charlotte. They have that win over Minnesota, and so that kind of puts them above some of these other teams. And then Pittsburgh got a big win this weekend. They went to Cincinnati. They were trailing. Things were not looking so good, but they went. They had the ball. They started making a run. Then they got the ball. It was third and medium, and there was a delay of game on the defense. Really, a disconcerting signals where they sort of faked a snap, tried to get the offense to jump. Officials are focused on that this year. That gave them a penalty. That gave Pittsburgh a first down, and they used that opportunity to go right down the field and kick the game-winning field goal. So huge win for them. Before I get to the top couple, just want to share this live listener's his guess or his thoughts. Miami 1, Louisville 2, Clemson 3, Boston College 4, and he'd have UNC all the way up at 5. Let's go ahead and move on up and see where we land on these top couple. NC State, they took a loss to Tennessee. I don't think that's super surprising, but they looked bad doing it. Again, I didn't think that was too shocking. I thought Tennessee would throw all of them, but now that it's official, NC State is through 2 games. 1, they struggled with Western Carolina, and 2, they got destroyed in Charlotte by Tennessee. I just don't think they're that good. Grayson McCall, this is the second year in a row they went and brought in a guy who's had a lot of success. They had Brennan Armstrong, and he had a ton of success at Virginia with Robert and I. And then he had a bad year at Virginia, and then he came and had another bad year for NC State. Grayson McCall had several great years with Coastal Carolina, which is obviously a level down, then had an injury-plagued or a down year, and now he's leveled up to the ACC, and it just doesn't look like he has maybe the arm or the accuracy. It was a competitive game at the very beginning until he threw a pick 6, and that sort of ended things. And Tennessee pulled away very quickly at that point. Okay, getting into the top couple now. Cal with a really surprising win. They go to Auburn and just shut down the Auburn offense. 4 picks for Peyton Thorne. Man, I don't know if Cal's good or Auburn's bad. I'm sure it's a little bit of both. But that Cal defense is pretty good, and that's a better win than really anyone below them has. So they certainly deserve to be where they're at here at 6. Again, I don't know that Auburn's very good, but to go into that hostile environment and shut down that offense says a lot. Maybe Cal, out of all the new teams, surprisingly, maybe they're the one that actually could be in the upper half of this conference. Boston College, they only played Duquesne, beat them by more than 50. Not gonna make a big deal out of beating Duquesne, but they ran the ball well. Thomas Castellanos looked awesome again. They've got that win against Florida State. Got that new coach in Bill O'Brien. Maybe this offensive line, maybe they can run the ball. They've got a quarterback that has tons of upside, certainly electric, and Thomas Castellanos. Maybe they're pretty good. Definitely agree here with Kevin saying Cal over Auburn was a shocker. I didn't even kind of consider that as a possibility. And again, Auburn's probably a lot worse than I expected, but Cal is definitely much better than I expected. Totally surprising there. And then Syracuse, man, I didn't really think they would hold serve at home. I figured that Georgia Tech was looking pretty good after that win against Florida State and then a win against Georgia State. But they had no answer for the new quarterback there, Kyle McCord. He threw for 381 yards and 4 touchdowns. I asked a friend of mine, I live in Atlanta, I reached out to a friend. I was like, man, what happened in Syracuse? And he said, I didn't know they had Tom Brady for quarterback. So, man, Syracuse has found something. Fran Brown goes out, gets Kyle McCord. Big deal. You bring him in from Ohio State. That's how they keep Aronda Gadsden. That's how they start getting momentum. Maybe they're one of the better teams in this conference. I certainly did not see that coming into the year. Obviously very early, but they're probably one of the early teams you got to think maybe that's a surprise team. Them, Boston College, Cal, some of the more positive surprises. As we get into these top couple, Louisville, number 3, they took care of business against Jacksonville State. They haven't played anyone yet. So, I'm not trying to overstate what they've done, but I feel pretty good about them moving forward. They get Georgia Tech at home, and then they go to South Bend. They'll have an open date before all that, but I could see them winning both of those. Let's pause for just a second on the ACC. Let's talk about Notre Dame. Northern Illinois comes to town. I'm glad I saw the score early. I paused the game while I was doing some other stuff, and I was able to catch the second half. And Northern Illinois looks like the better team. Notre Dame's got some offensive issues. Their offensive line's not great. They don't run the ball great. And Riley Leonard, in my head from that from the Duke loss last year that Clemson suffered, in my head he was just so great. But watching him, he's not a major downfield kind of threat. That offense looks very whatever. I was keeping an eye out for Bo Collins. He didn't catch my eye. He didn't seem to do much. Man, Notre Dame does not look good. I think Louisville could beat them in South Bend. I don't see Notre Dame making the playoff with this Northern Illinois loss. Louisville looks better than them. Southern Cal looks better than them. They could have a couple more losses. Then you get into these top two, and I know some Clemson fans might say Clemson should be one after their excellent performance. Let's talk about Miami, and then we'll circle back to Clemson. So Miami, they just played Florida A&M, solid win. They just did everything they're supposed to do. And with their win over Florida and the way they've looked in both of these, I think they clearly deserve to be one. But Clemson's weird because I feel like Clemson played maybe their C game against Georgia. And if you play your C game against Georgia and Georgia's playing better than you, then you're going to get killed, right? But then against App State, we saw what their A game looks like, and it's easy to say that's because it's App State. I don't think it is. A lot of the deep balls that Cade was missing against Georgia, he was connecting on. They changed their wide receiver rotation, and it made a huge difference. And I really think that Clemson could be a lot better moving forward if they play like they did in this game. I don't know that they beat Georgia, but they're a lot better. Comment here from Tiger Pride. Cam Ward is elite, and Miami's O-line is no joke. Yeah, absolutely right. Miami's O-line was good last year. They're good again this year. I think Clemson's O-line is good too. But when you have a quarterback who you really trust, and maybe Cade can in the next couple of weeks sort of get in that Cam Ward area. But right now, Cam Ward looks awesome, and their offensive line looks awesome, and those are two big pieces. Then they have Xavier Estrepo at wide receiver, so they've got the pieces. They could be a team that Clemson and Miami both can make the playoffs.